What is going on, everybody? Welcome into The Highlight, a serious business podcast for super serious business people. And as always, I'm joined today by my co-host and business partner, Austin Lynch. Austin, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm ready for a time of reminiscing.
It is a day of reminiscing for us. I'm pretty excited because we just crossed our 1 year anniversary. Officially, the date was what day? September
16th, 21.
Okay, yeah. So this episode will come out obviously a couple weeks after that, but we've officially been 1 month in business. And by the time you're listening to this, probably 13 months in business. God willing, we survive another month. And
That's right.
I would say things are looking good that we will, but congratulations, man. I did want to take a second. Like I said before, this is my second time running a real business like this and starting something from zero. And it's really hard to get a business off the ground. I think to go from being on your couch and being what we call wantrepreneur, right? You watch the Shark Tanks, you dream, you from the couch, you quarterback and you say, I would do this, I would do that. I can't believe they said this, said that. And you just daydream and to actually go from that to actually selling stuff and serving clients and you're in the game and you're in the arena and all the things. It's a big deal. And I think the SBA has a stat that says like 20% of small businesses that start close within the first year. So it's a feat, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, it's good to know that we're beating that 20. And I think what's the 5-year stat, Chandler?
Oh, 5-year it gets even worse. It's like 50% is out of the game. Yeah. And then within 10 years of every business that starts, only 20% are still around. And, it's also interesting that most businesses that start, like 80-something% that start, never actually hire anybody. So many businesses out there, the majority of them are solopreneur ventures. And that's really kind of who we're making this show for is, you're not alone. You do business alone maybe, but, you're not alone. There's people like us out there trying to help. So,
and hopefully, some of the things that we talk about can help those people. And that's kind of the goal, right?
Yeah, all 4.5 of our listeners. I don't know who the half is, but I would love to meet you.
It's probably my mom.
There you go. Well, I'm excited today. We were talking a little bit through the show beforehand, and I'm really excited because we are going to be reminiscing on the last year. And I think what blows me away about a year is that it seems so long, and somehow at the same time it feels really short. Yeah. And when you're in the grind day to day, it doesn't feel like you're making much progress. But you sent out this awesome 1 year recap email for the whole team to sort of reminisce on all the stories we've had that were really memorable from the last year. And I was like, man, we've done a lot and a lot has happened. But on a week to week basis, it doesn't feel like a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing how the time has flown by. But at the same time, to your point, there have been so many things happen that we forgot about or that just happened and we just kind of kept moving forward, which is what you need to do, good or bad. And so, it was interesting, in the week or two leading up to that day, the 16th, I just wanted to start to write down some notes and kind of think through some funny things that have happened and some things that I'm proud of, and then just share those out because, again, for me, that's going to be something I look back on maybe after 2 or 3 years, or after 5 or 10 years. And having that to look back on, I felt was more than worth the time it took to prep. So it was just a cool thing. And again, I think it's important to look back on those milestones.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So Austin and I were talking and we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about for this show. And we thought it'd be fun to bring you guys in on a few of the things that happened. Now you're not in the inner circle actually, so we can't tell you everything. But we've got a few things here. So we pulled 3 different moments from the last year that resonated most with us. And I think if you listen to this, it'll give you some heart as you're starting out on your first business or if you're in business yourself already. So go ahead, Austin, kick us off. What is the first memory you want to reminisce on here on the 1 year anniversary?
Well, it felt appropriate to make our first memory our start, which we've called the scrappy start. When we started thinking through this whole company and the idea of serving businesses through digital marketing together, one of the things that I think we both instantly agreed on was that we wanted to bootstrap this thing from the ground up, and we wanted to try and make it completely customer funded, meaning we didn't want to go pour a bunch of cash into a business that didn't have revenue. And that was really important to us both, because we both know how important it is to just be selling and be in actual business, be active. And so that was the first thing I wanted to touch on. I think there were several small memories underneath kind of the scrappy start. One of which is my personal favorite, and I think that was we had talked to someone who we knew that they wanted to work with us, but at this point we didn't have a company name, a company logo, a bank account. We weren't a legitimate business at the time, and we took that $500 payment via Venmo, which I think we didn't even have connected to a bank account yet. That's one of my favorite memories, is just so early on, that $500 payment for month one from our first client, who I believe is still with us today. That payment really kicked things off for us and allowed us to start actually building the business, depositing money into an actual bank, creating our LLC on Zen Business, no free shout outs. Zen Business, which is like the most
Pretty
basic
sure you just
LLC.
Googled how to file an LLC online, and they probably were either running an ad or were just top search result. And you're like,
yeah, I think I checked 2 or 3 to see which one would be the fastest turnaround. I think that was what we cared about the most at the point, was we needed a bank account and we needed it done yesterday. And Zen Business, I think they promised like a 2 or 3 day turnaround on filing the paperwork and getting us an EIN, which is all we needed to get the bank rolling. But it was cool that $500 Venmo payment is actually what paid to start the LLC. I think it was, $200 to file with the state of Tennessee for our LLC. And granted, we're now having to go back a year later and pay for further legal assistance to kind of really set up our structure better to serve us over the next 5 to 10 years. But at the time, none of that was relevant. We had a $0 bank account. We had a brand name that we came up with, I think, the night before, and we just needed to go. And so, hey, again,
we
no
did
free
kick the
shout outs, but
tires on
Zen
the name.
Business.
Yeah, I remember kicking the tires on the name for a long time. And I think for me, what I remember the most about that time was really the early days of the barbecue restaurant, where I was very interested in all the fun, quote unquote, easy things of starting a business. The branding, the logos, the name. Can we get a website? Can we get an email address? Can we make business cards? And I made that mistake in the early days of that barbecue business, where I just wasted time not selling more barbecue and not getting more relationships set up. So instead, I just did all the fun stuff and wasted so much time on things that did not matter really to the business at that time in its life. And so I was very adamant with you in the early days. I was like, I don't care about anything. I don't care about a name. I don't care about anything until somebody will pay us for the idea that we have. Because so many times, again, back to the entrepreneur that sits on the couch, there's nothing testing your idea. There's no danger. There's no risk involved in you sitting there and having an opinion. But the minute you put something out there on the market to sell and you ask somebody to give you money for it, and they come back to you and they say no, that hurts. That can be a cut to the ego. But nobody's going to say no as you're designing a logo. It's fun to put 4 or 5 mock-ups up on your Facebook page and ask all your friends who you shouldn't be asking for advice what they think. Right. And they give you their terrible opinion. And then it's just easy. And now everybody knows you're in business, and like you're just getting all the dopamine, which is just, it feels so good. All the dopamine, give it to me. And your business hasn't actually grown. You've not actually done anything to launch it. So I made the mistake the first time around, and I refused to let us do it the second time around. And luckily you were right on board with me from day one. And we sold that person. I think it was like on a Wednesday. And I remember telling you that we were going to confirm it and that I needed a way to collect payment. And we had to very chaotically put the Venmo thing together, get everything together very quickly, and the name, because we didn't have a name. And so I think we Parkinson's law states that a activity will expand to the time that you allow it. And it's funny that we were working on a name for probably a month, and all of a sudden we came up with it in 24 hours.
Yeah, I don't remember where I heard this quote, but one of my favorite quotes that I heard lately was, "The fun thing about doing something last minute is it only takes a minute."
That's
Uh,
so good.
and so that's really what it felt like for us. I think it
Yeah.
was, we had to have a name. Like we can't sell this product to
Yeah.
someone, the service to someone, without having an account with a name on it. And so we sort of just were forced into a quicker timeline, and that was great because we came up with a name that we both liked, and it's worked out to date. And so
It
that's
worked
a
out.
that's a great memory. I mean, it was September of 21. Obviously, I had just had foot surgery, and so I was in a cloth cast at the time. Couldn't even walk. I was on a little scooter. Um, Man, those are good memories. There's a
I
really
think we have a
fun
Polaroid
Polaroid
picture.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were doing a bourbon cheers
Yeah.
with my boot on.
So, now that we got the business launched, our second memory comes to
Yeah,
not all that glitters is gold, right? We were very
that's right.
excited to get all those clients, and while our first client is still with us, our second client is not. And
That's right.
difficult clients is our second core memory here that we want to talk through. Do you want to unpack that a little bit for us? We're going
Yeah,
to protect
sure.
the names of the not so
Of
innocent
course.
here, just because we don't, actually want the smoke from anybody.
Yeah. So, right. So number two, you're spot on. Difficult clients. So, yeah, not everything is as easy as collecting a check every month and servicing these people, and everyone having great reviews. It doesn't always work out that way. So our second client was, for us at the time, felt like a pretty big fish. They were a multi-brand company that allowed us to work across several brands, and they were also going to be doing a big kind of rebranding and relaunch of their biggest product for one of these brands. And so it was a digital advertising heavy client, and we really ramped them up right around the time of it would have been early November, late October when we were getting them ramped up. And naturally, they were a kind of a product service company, and the Q4 kind of holiday season works well for them. And so it was a great time for us to join kind of hands because they needed a lot of this work done. That really is something that we do well in, selling in that season. And so we kicked it off. And again, it was a very interesting, very busy season. We were both still working in the office 8 to 5. As mentioned, I still had a boot on my leg. I remember having calls where I had to have my leg kind of propped up out to the side where the person couldn't see me. He knew I had surgery, but it's like no one wants to see that. So I remember those calls. And then maybe more crazy than anything, my son was born. My first child was born the day before Black Friday, which is when his campaigns were going to be going live. And so when I say difficult client, I think it's important to note a couple of things here. One of which is the brand we worked on was not necessarily a super easy brand to sell, in the instance that it had a very niche, very hyper-specific audience. And so that was kind of challenge number one. Challenge number two was that this particular client contact was very interested in offloading work and then really relying on everybody else to drive his business forward instead of putting people in place and leading them towards the direction they wanted to go. And so that was kind of the second challenge. And the third challenge was really just a tough time responding to feedback. So me, I would reach out to them. Obviously, Q4 is a crazy time. You've got sales holidays every other week, and there's a lot of back and forth that goes on. And so, there were some times where we would say, "Oh, hey, this campaign's doing really well. Would you like me to increase the budget to really, try and scale up these results?" And there was a lot of there was some tough communication there because he didn't really want to spend more, but then when the campaign ended, he didn't like the amount of sales he got. And so, a lot of that goes back to those conversations where it's like, well, hey man, we really pushed a lot of times to try and increase and scale this campaign, but you were hesitant. And so there were a lot of issues there, but some of the fun memories, as fun as they can get, looking back on those was, I remember being in the delivery room of the hospital and having to, on my phone, send emails to, or maybe it was texts, either way, to the client, just because he wanted to make sure everything was set up. He knew that, we were about to have a baby, and he was like probably really freaking nervous that I was going to let things just fall off the rails, which we didn't. We did a lot of work on the front end to make sure that everything was prepped for, a smooth, solid launch. But the reality is, the holiday season is so freaking crazy. You need to be nimble and you need to be making these changes. And because we were such an early, young company, we didn't have people in place to take any of that work off of us yet. And so, while I was sending emails,
6 weeks old.
Yeah, that's right. And while I'm sitting here emailing and all those kind of things in the delivery room, that came home with us too. I mean, I remember being up at like 3 or 4 in the morning and having, my sleeping wife here and my sleeping 3-day-old baby to my right. And I was like turning down the dim on my computer so I could, get some ads running in the holiday season. So, that was a really difficult one. It was a challenge. And the reality was, we worked with them for a little over a quarter, and then things, they didn't work out. So we don't work with them anymore. But and that was hard for us, like I said at the beginning of kind of this whole difficult clients section, they were a big fish at the time for us. And it was a tough one to lose because that meant less revenue on a monthly basis coming in. And that means you have to find the next client to kind of replace them. And luckily, we had done a good job keeping our pipeline fairly full of good, healthy leads. And we had been nurturing clients along the way until they were ready to work with us. But yeah, it has not always been smooth sailing. And I think that's important to call out because that's just not how it works all the time.
No, it's not. And another thing we can add to that is, we were really cautious, and probably still are to this day, where we've set the company up in a way to where we don't have to work with people that are not good fits for us long term just to get a check. We ended up letting that specific client go just because he was so disrespectful is the only word I'm going to use in this podcast, because there was meetings where he would he said some really not great things that if you had to have a check, you'd kind of have to take. Because we all have to do what we have to do to get by. But because we had set the company up in a way to where we didn't have to deal with that,
right.
We could sever that relationship pretty quickly. So our advice is really to just make sure that you're never put in a position to where you have to compromise values, I think is maybe the right
dignity.
Word. Your dignity. Yeah. It's just not, and even if we needed the check, maybe you don't deal with that. I don't know. It's a tough call. Everybody's going to have to make it at their own level, but as quickly as you can, set your business up in a way to where you don't have to take that sort of abuse from somebody. Because the truth is, if we're being honest, and this is not pie in the sky, dreaming of a business ownership, there's tough choices that have to be made. And sometimes you're going to have to eat a giant pile of dog shit that you don't want to eat because you want the business to launch and to make it. And it's great to sit there and say that you have standards and that you're not going to deal with that. And I would never let somebody talk to me that way. And it's like, well, until you've been put in the position, you don't actually know what you're going to do. And I would say you handled that really well, because it went on for a while, but then eventually, it was just time to let it go.
Yeah.
And we did.
Well, I would say, the reality was, and I guess I realized I hadn't really alluded to the disrespectful comments that were made during meetings and things like that. But, I think even before the kid was born, we had the kid. Miles is his name. He has a name. He's a boy. Before Miles was born, we sent over the first few reports, and I specifically remember, just to give you an idea of kind of how this guy talked to us. I remember he looked at it, was, I guess, not happy with the way it was laid out at first, and he called it a little girl's report to my face, which is pretty disrespectful in a number of ways, I guess, but it's also just not appropriate. Yeah. So anyway, that was kind of the stuff we were putting up with, and it was easier before the days of 3 a.m. wake up calls to a screaming baby. And I think once, we got about 2 months in, 8 weeks of sleep deprivation, being tired, being frustrated already, plus that, to your point, we had to make that decision of it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
We need to make better decisions.
It's so funny too, because I think, especially at that time, we thought everybody was going to be good people, and we just assumed the best of everybody. And we were like, oh, he's just stressed going into Q4. He's just nervous working with a new partner that's managing so much ad spend for him, and on and on and on and on. And I think during that time, we just kept making excuses for him. And what it's done for me, at least, I don't know about you, I'm to the point now where I'm really good at trusting my gut when we're meeting with a client on the front end. And I have told several clients, or prospects, not clients, hey, this isn't going to be a good fit. I don't think it's going to work out for whatever real reason, but also like the reason I don't actually tell them is the internal reason of like, there's too many red flags here. I can't, because I truly believe you can market any business in this world. Like every business can fit into our marketing flywheel. I 100% believe that. You have to be the type of person that actually is worth it. I don't know how to explain that. Like, it's not worth is probably the wrong word, but like
it's just, we have an ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
We've been very clear about setting up who our ideal customer profile is. And that means saying psychographically, do they work well with us? And that's the piece that oftentimes doesn't work out. We've seen that piece fail more times than anything else. And I think to your point, I think we're getting better about judging that fact on the front end, because it takes a lot of time and effort to onboard brand new clients. And if they are going to leave after 2 or 3 months, it's really not worth either of your time. And it actually just leads to more frustration. What's a couple months worth of checks if you spend 3 or 4 months worth of time getting it set up? So
no, it's very true, because our profitability as an agency comes after the 90-day mark. That's really where we start to make our profit on a client. It's kind of like getting a new bank account set up, right? The bank really makes money on you after the first 6 months together. And it's not too different in an agency world. We've learned something I didn't know on the front end. Yeah. So here we are.
Yeah.
The third thing we wanted to talk about, this is really the thing I got to give you the most credit for, because it's something you're so good at. And I'm so not. We've talked about it on the podcast so many times already, but it's the taking the time to celebrate the small wins, because like we said earlier, it feels like a long year, and it feels like we didn't do a whole lot. But then when I was reading back, even this email was such a cool way to celebrate the win of getting over a year old. And you just took the time to like set that up and remind everybody of all these different stories in there. And that was so cool. What was your favorite milestone celebration from the year? And then tell everybody why you think that's so important.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's really critical to celebrate wins and milestones as you go, because if your goal as a leader in your company is to grow it long term and see it take off from a vision to a reality, you have to just take a couple of minutes, because everything's always going to be so busy. Everything will always be busy. If you make busyness an excuse, it will always be your excuse, and you'll never do this. So taking a few minutes to just sit and think, like, what have we really done here? Are we happy? One of the big things I've talked about with you is when I started the business, we set lofty goals even for year one. And so, you have to be able to look back and say, okay, what goals do we hit? What goals didn't we hit? You can't let yourself just be so pissed because you get 80, 85% to one of your goals. Because looking back on it, if you had told yourself that you were going to get there on day one, how would you have felt? And personally, I would have felt pretty damn good. I would have been pretty proud of that. And so that's just important to keep in mind, is just always do that. I don't know. I think that's something that a previous employer taught me, and it's stuck with me. I also like fun stuff in general. You know that. That's why it's one of our core values, maybe to your detriment, but it's one of our core values for a reason, because it has to be fun. Otherwise, we're just going to be miserable. Like, why would we do that? That's not fun. That's not worth
I choose misery.
Doing.
I love it. Give me all the darkness.
Well, anyway, so we've made it a point over the last year to try and gather and do something fun together monthly. And so that has been probably one of my favorite things we've been able to do. So, I mean, some of those things, we've done pool parties where we've catered food and drinks. We've done barbecues where you hear about Chandler's barbecue talents and history all the time on the podcast. We got to do some of that. We got to taste some of that. He's got a smash burger video on YouTube that's awesome. So we got to taste that after like a year of it being teased. And, we've done other things. We've gone and seen movies in IMAX. We're big Star Wars fans here. We went to go see Rogue One when they re-released it in theater. I think it's just been this periodic time of intentionally gathering, celebrating our wins, not having to focus on work 24/7 when we're together. I think that's been a good thing for us. And then, as our company's grown, we've kind of tried to involve others in those monthly activities. And so I think that's been my favorite. And that's one that I look forward to continuing, into years 2 and on.
Oh, so this is sticking around. That's great. That's good to know. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. As long as I'm here, that'll also be here.
So I
hate to break it to you.
Cool. No, I think the thing you said that most resonates with me right there was the intentionality piece. It's being really intentional to take time to celebrate. Hey guys, we're doing this. This thing's hard. Let's take a minute, step back, breathe, laugh together, have fun together. And it's not big. Like, I don't think we've spent maybe over $100 once. It's definitely never been over $200. I do all of our books. I know it's not been over $200 yet.
No, it's never crazy.
And and so compared to the size of the company and the number of people that come, like, it's not a huge thing, but the memories that we create in those moments are really, really, really solid. And I think it also helps getting the families on board with what we're doing, because me and you and the other partners that are working so hard on this business, a lot of times into the family time hours are getting sucked up into it. Getting them involved in the day-to-day stuff is impossible. But letting them come and participate in the celebrations
and the fun
is a great way for them to feel the wins, even though they don't really see the bank accounts or they don't see the P&L. They don't get jazzed up about that stuff as much as we do. Yeah. They do feel like, oh, hey, they're building something here that's working. This is great.
Yeah. And it's building a foundation of people that you enjoy being around and trust. And so that really does help when it comes time to have a difficult conversation. It's a lot easier when you've had a foundation of, shared memories, shared fun, those kind of things. And so that's been great.
The rule is, people have to know you care before they care what you know. Yeah. Right. It doesn't matter if
that's a good one.
Complimented or they're getting chastised or they're getting corrected. If they don't know that you care about them on the front end, none of that stuff matters on the back end, even compliments. Because if you compliment me and I don't have a relationship with you on the front end, I'm going to assume you need something or want something and you're buttering me up. Yeah. Like, what is going on here? What's the dig?
Yeah. And I think the last thing I'll say about celebrating wins and about intentionality is, when like I was writing the email and it's like just trying to be intentional about getting something put together that, so that we can just breathe for 5 minutes, read the email, respond with some funny memories that you've had so that we can go back and look. One other thing we did, and one of my personal favorite things over the last year, just because it was fun, was we got our company shirts, right? That was awesome. We now have something to make us look more like a team, like a unit. When we're going to talk and sell, it makes us look professional. And so, we did that probably 3 months ago, maybe. We spent, hardly a couple $100, to get all that done. And then as part of the kind of 1 year milestone, we snuck around and we made some special T-shirts to celebrate the 1 year.
We didn't sneak around anything. I did not approve this. I did not co-sign this.
I snuck around. I made the T-shirts with Brandon. Brandon did an awesome job.
Brandon, I got words for you, bud.
We got T-shirts, which you'll see in a couple weeks on this show. And we also got mugs, which you'll see in a couple weeks on this show. So get excited about that. But those are fun. It's like, don't do stuff that's going to bankrupt the brand or the business. So don't go spend, don't go buying Versace branded high B marketing shirts, but go get something that's going to be good and treat your team well.
Hey, that's my mantra. I can't argue with you when you flip my own words back on me. So I guess fair enough. You win. You have won today's discussion on whether or not fun sticks around. So I want to give somebody, I feel like we've done some stories and I feel like it's been actionable. I feel like you can take away some things here and build your own business, start your own business, wherever you're at in the journey. But like, if you had to boil it down for you, one thing, like what one piece of advice would you give somebody that they hold on to as they start a business? What's the best piece of advice for somebody that's looking to start a business?
Well, you hear me say it all the time. I think I've probably already referred to this once during this episode, but I'm going to tell you the same exact thing, and I'm going to tell it to you 3 different ways, okay? Because it is, in my opinion, truly the most important thing you can do if you're starting a business. All right, the first is hit the ground selling. You have to be acting. You got to be doing stuff. Second is action over perfection. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. We were talking about how it's fun to go and do brand polls and get your logo perfect and your website ironed out before you sell. Don't do it. Action over perfection. You have to have sales, otherwise you don't have a business. And the third is just simple. Do shit, don't bullshit. You have to be acting. You have to be going out and selling. You have to be a freaking business. You're not a model business that, is just a shell. Unless you're not selling. And so that's really what it boils down to, is just don't try and get everything perfect out the gate. Go on Zen Business, no free shout outs, get your $200 LLC built, and just start somewhere.
No free shout outs. That's all I'm saying. I like that a lot.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. I like the action bit, because you can always pivot, and action creates momentum. And then momentum gives you what you actually want, which is a thriving business. The piece of advice that I would give, that if this is a 2-sided coin, action over perfection, do shit, don't dog shit, or whatever Austin said, those things, that's one side of the coin. For me, the other side of the coin is perseverance. I mean, it's just truly,
that's true.
So much craziness is going to come up in the course of a business's life that you just persevere through. And you're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know where to go. You're not going to know how to proceed. You're not going to know, but you can persevere. And perseverance, to me, is simply taking one foot and putting it in front of the other one, and then dragging the next foot in front of the next one. And sometimes it's really easy to do, like when we're celebrating and having fun, and it's like I can sprint to the pool party that we throw to have fun. Like that's an easy thing for me to persevere to. But then when we get on a phone call and we get chewed out by a client that is not a great client, not a good fit, and all that drama, like, bro, it was tough. And you too, we were both on that call, and it was like one dragging foot to the next one. But I think the thing that we did was that we took action in the beginning, and then we persevered through to see that action to the end. And then guess what? We took another action, and then we persevered through again, and then we took another action. Like that's everything we've done.
Consistency.
So true. Yeah. I mean, it's the reason why it's the last piece of our marketing flywheel, is you have to be consistent if you want to win.
That's right.
So, well, buddy, I appreciate you, man. I want to say that publicly and on the record. I know I give you a hard time all the time, and it's mostly I just give you a hard time publicly because I can't let people know that I actually love you and care about you. But man, we've crushed this year, and I'm proud of us, man. I'm proud of us.
It's been a good year. It's been a good 12 months, and I am super optimistic and excited about what's coming for the next 12.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see what we have to persevere through next. So, guys, we appreciate you all watching and listening. If you could rate us on the podcast apps, it helps. If you can subscribe on the YouTube, that helps as well. We'll see you next time. Peace.
See ya.